The UFC has given a platform to some of the best fighters over the years. Dustin Poirier is one such talent who is widely admired in the UFC, and why wouldn't he be? He has brilliant striking skills and is a well-rounded combat arsenal who has outstanding achievements in the sport. The MMA fighter is about to hit another major milestone in his career soon. Keep watching this video to find out what it is. First up, Poirier is hoping to make history. Dustin Poirier, a former US interim lightweight champion, will make his long-awaited return to the Octagon on November 12th. He will be going head-to-head against former title contender Michael Chandler, and this match is going to be a special one for Dustin since it means he's one victory away from tying Jon Jones for the most victories inside the UFC Octagon. He's 26-1 in the UFC, with 2 victories over Max Holloway and 1 over Conor McGregor. Not only that, but he has also defeated former interim champion Justin Gaethje, as well as undisputed champions Eddie Alvarez and Anthony Pettis. Without a doubt, he has one of the most outstanding resumes in the sport. Take a look at the numbers. Dustin has 20 wins in the UFC Octagon and will tie Charles Oliveira if he defeats Michael Chandler at UFC 281. Not only that, but he will also tie Jim Miller and Do Bronx for the most wins in the UFC's lightweight division, which is insanely impressive. Moving on, does he actually have a shot? Dustin Poirier will return to the Octagon inside Madison Square Garden in New York for a 3-round fight against Michael Chandler at UFC 281. The match is set for November 12th, and we couldn't be more excited. Poirier will be looking to reclaim the title with a big win over Chandler, who seems to be in amazing form after his last few fights. In fact, Chandler is going to enter the Octagon with confidence after a brutal victory over Tony Ferguson, but getting a win might not be that easy for the fighter. Honestly, both fighters are incredible entertainers, so this match might just be the fight of the year. So what exactly makes this fight so different? The most obvious reason is that neither man has a track record of putting on anything less than wildly exciting fights in their previous appearances in the Octagon. The Diamond Poirier has a pressure-based boxing style, walking his opponents down to land rough, booming combinations. It's a strategy that forces his opponents to respond, and almost always the fight ends in a brawl. Whereas Iron Mike Chandler might be considered a better counter-striker than Poirier. He also has a strong wrestling game, but he's just as good at simply winging power punches. Although his only disadvantage when competing against Michael Chandler is a lack of grappling experience, something Chandler will look to exploit when the two stalwarts square off. As the two fighting styles go head-to-head, we'd say they're both evenly matched, and we are definitely in for a show on the 12th. Following up, Poirier still has competition, but even if he wins his next fight, his journey to the top of the list isn't going to be easy. With Jim Miller nearing the end of his MMA career, it's safe to say that the battle for the most UFC wins will be between Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier. But we can't just rule out Jon Jones that quickly, because he plans on making his UFC heavyweight debut on December 10th. Right now, he shares the record of 20 wins with Rafael dos Anjos, George St. Pierre, Michael Bisping, and of course, our favorite player, Dustin Poirier. On the other hand, while Bisping and St. Pierre have already retired, Rafael dos Anjos is still a formidable opponent. Moving on, Jim Miller currently holds the record for the most wins inside the UFC Octagon with 24 victories to his name, and Donald Cerrone, an MMA veteran, is second, tied with former heavyweight champion Andrei Arlovski. With that said, Demian Maia and Charles Oliveira, 2 Brazilian legends, are ranked third. So if Dustin wins in his next fight against Chandler at UFC 281, he's gonna join the ranks of the elite. And if Michael Chandler shows up against Dustin Poirier, it's fair to say the 33-year-old has it covered. After all, Poirier has faced the division's best strikers, and his recent record proves that no one can match his tenacity and grit. Finally, what is next for the MMA fighter? Dustin Poirier is hoping to get into the title picture if he defeats Chandler at UFC 281. While he clarified why he hasn't called out the new champion, Islam Makhachev, he assured fans that scoring a fight is his main goal. The 33-year-old is going to rely on his resume to land the title shot without having to advertise it on social media. Islam Makhachev defeated Charles Oliveira to win the undisputed lightweight title at UFC 280. While fans were excited to see the battle between two grapplers, Makhachev's striking is incomparable. With a stiff shot, Islam knocked Do Bronx down and then finished him on the ground with a submission. Makhachev showed us the evolution of his skill set in the previous PPV. Fans can no longer dismiss him as merely a wrestler. He is now much more than that. Islam's striking is on the right track, and his power is definitely causing concern among his opponents. And while lesser men would be terrified of going against Makhachev after that match, Poirier is not one of them. So the question now is, can Dustin earn a title shot by defeating Chandler? Chandler is the division's 5th-ranked fighter, so a win over a top 5 opponent should guarantee Dustin a shot. If he does get the opportunity, it will be his 3rd title shot after UFC 242 and UFC 269. But Poirier will have to wait a little longer for a shot at the title, since Islam Makhachev is currently preparing to face 145-pound champion Alexander Alexander Volkanovski. Moving on to the top 6 UFC records of all time. First off, at number 6, the most takedowns in history. Georges St-Pierre currently holds the record for the most takedowns in UFC history, with 90 in just 23 fights. In fact, he's widely regarded as one of the best fighters to ever enter the Octagon, and rightfully so. This was a pretty important aspect of GSP's fighting style. Plus, he finished his career with a record of 26 wins and 2 losses, allowing him to win 2 titles in 2 different divisions, welterweight and middleweight. On the other hand, Merab Dvalishvili, the UFC's number 2 ranked bantamweight, and Curtis Blaydes, the UFC's number 3 ranked heavyweight contender, are the only 2 active fighters on the roster who could break this record. Coming in at number 5, Holloway landed the most strikes. Despite losing the UFC featherweight title to Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway remains the fighter with the most strikes landed in the UFC, with over 3,000 strikes in just 25 fights. His 2 fights against Calvin Kattar in January 2021 and Yair Rodriguez in November 2021 were the deciding factors that separated him from Georges St-Pierre's 2,591 strikes. Given that Holloway will only be 31 years old this year, we can't wait to see how high that number will go by the end of his fighting career. Moving on to number 4, the most knockouts in the game. Derek Lewis, a heavyweight knockout artist and former title challenger, passed Matt Brown for the most knockouts in UFC history. The fighter holds the record with 13 KOs. Lewis set the record in the category with a first-round knockout victory over Chris Daukaus in December 2021. The Black Beast has fought in 23 UFC fights, winning 17 of them. Only his victories over Roy Nelson, Francis Ngannou, and Ilir Latifi were by decision. The rest were by knockouts. For number 3, the record for wins by submissions. Charles Oliveira has the most finishes in UFC history, primarily because he also has the most submissions in the show. The Brazilian champion had an 11-win fight winning streak dating back to 2018, before his match against Islam Makhachev, making him a popular pick in UFC betting odds. Oliveira submitted 16 of his opponents under the UFC banner. He has a highly decorated career and is definitely a fan favorite. Up next at number 2, the best finisher in the game. Charles Oliveira has the most UFC finishes at 19, followed by Jim Miller and Donald Cerrone at 16, and Anderson Silva follows closely behind at 14 finishes. Even though he lost his recent match against Islam Makhachev, he's still regarded as a true finisher. Finally, at number 1, the most wins in the UFC. Jim Miller has the most UFC victories at 24 wins. He has won 6 of his fights by knockouts and is deadly on a good day. He's earned the reputation for being a guy who steps up when put in tough situations. Cerrone and Andrei Arlovski are tied together in second place with 23 wins. Cerrone previously held this record before Miller snatched it away. That's a wrap for this video. Are you excited about Poirier and Chandler's fight? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.